Maria, welcome to the Athlete Lab podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Phil.
So you go by MJ?
I do.
Okay, well, great. Well, it's an honor to have you here. First and foremost, you served our country for so long, and I feel like making sure that we always, say thank you for your service. It's incredible people like you are willing to do what you do for our country.
Thank you. Well, it's really a privilege. It was what I wanted to do. I loved serving, so it's not like anyone forced me to do it. So thank you. But it was quite a privilege and honor to do it. I loved it. I'm sorry it's over.
Oh, that's great. So you're an athlete. Everything we do here is based on athletes and the science and the sports and the theories behind making a good athlete great and a great athlete elite. And you gave a bit of a brief athletic background. I heard you speak earlier. I'm curious to hear like what you did growing up as in sports, and then how you ended up in crew at the Naval Academy. I think that's a unique path and something that we don't see every day here.
Yeah, so I grew up in Cleveland, so very similar, just like almost like being home here. I mean, obviously the rivalry of the sports teams, but it's very similar to, there's these smaller Midwestern teams with big rabid sports fans at the collegiate and professional level.
That's for sure.
So I grew up playing, back then it was, for girls, volleyball, basketball, softball. I played that year round. I have 3 brothers, so I grew up, just a tomboy playing sports. And so I loved it, always playing outside in the woods. And then basketball was my favorite. So I continued with basketball and softball in high school. And then I got into the Naval Academy, and we got a letter recruiting, if we were a certain height and size, like think about the crew team, because a lot of schools just didn't have crew back then, mostly an East Coast. It's mostly an East Coast sport. I mean, the Title IX enforcement has moved it more to the Midwest, and the different, like the Big Ten schools all have pretty robust rowing programs now. But back then they didn't. They had to recruit freshmen and plebes for what was then the novice program, and I was the right size for it at 5'9". I mean, most of the professional rowers and the elite rowers the women are closer to 6 feet tall. But it worked well. It worked out well for me. So I was like, well, I might as well give this a try. I wasn't good enough to be recruited for basketball at the Naval Academy at that level. So I tried crew, and it worked out well. It fit. It was natural. It's different in that it's a team sport, but it's not a game. So whereas when you're really into playing basketball, you might be sprinting up and down that court, but you're focused on the game. And so you don't realize maybe how winded you're getting. And then you're in an intense back and forth. And then you realize, oh my goodness, I'm spent. When you're rowing or say swimming or running, there's nothing to take your mind off of it. You're just focused on the race, your technique, and beating the other boats. And so it hurts, and you're focusing on the pain, and you just have to pull harder and make it hurt more, because it's just about brute strength and endurance and being faster and better, which means you just have to give it your all, which means rising above the incredible amount of discomfort that you feel in that sport. And so that was the biggest change in going to a team sport like crew, as opposed to what I think is super fun when you play basketball or softball or volleyball.
So you're doing that. You're going through the physical demands of it, the obvious, it's a total body strength sport. Mm-hmm. And then same with basketball, same with volleyball, the other sports you played, like there's definitely, components to everything. How did you handle the mental side of that? Where you know that it's just going to hurt more. You just referenced, do they train you on the mental side of being able to persevere through those moments? Were there things that you were utilizing as you're in the boat? And I can only imagine. I mean, it's not, the weather's not always great either. Like, it's not always going to be sunny in 75.
That's right. It's not sunny 75. The good thing is when you're rowing, you're working out really well. So you're getting a fantastic workout. The only major muscle group it doesn't work is the chest. So it works with back, muscles, legs, everything. So maybe you just do some push-ups or some bench press, then you're working all the major muscle groups. For me, how did I build the resilience and overcoming the pain? Well, the cold, once you get going, the cold is fine. So even if it's raining out, the thing is when it's raining out, when it's not storming, the water's really still. So a gentle rain is actually ideal, because then the waves go down. So you have really still water. The Severn River in Annapolis is wide, and there's a lot of boat traffic. So you're getting waked a lot. And the wakes from the recreational traffic will make the boat, you have to stop rowing and let the boats go by. So there's a lot you have to contend with. Whereas the Ivy League schools have these really elite rivers and private lakes where they don't have as much of that to deal with. So we took pride in that as well. Like, hey, we're a rough water crew. We can row in rougher conditions and with a lot of other boats on the water, because you row through currents. If the weather, if there's some wave action in the water, like you row in that. Unless it's really bad or there's storm activity, you go out and row. And so yes, most of the winter, you're cold and uncomfortable. But we warm up. The coxswains, they really suck it up because they don't get a workout. They're directing and steering the boat, running the practice, really for the coach, because the coach can't be with every boat. So the coxswains just sit there and freeze through the winter. And, we love them, like good on them. Plus, they have to also not eat a lot so they can stay lighter in the boat so we can pull them. What prepared me for that resilience? I will say that I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and I was a plebe when I started rowing. And in the 90s, the Naval Academy, the service academies were pretty brutal. Like it was, and I will say Catholic school too, like it wasn't so much the carrot, it was more the stick. So, in kind of that maybe slightly masochistic way, I was already pretty miserable as a plebe at the Naval Academy. And so to escape the upper class giving us just all kinds of heat and let's just call it really excessive training. I wanted to get out of Bancroft Hall where we all live, get over to the boathouse and go to practice was a refuge. And so getting a good workout and being with the other women on the team and being away from the plebe existence was actually quite a relief. It's not a party school, so I would imagine for us at service academies back then, going to a brutal workout or a really hard workout was something of a relief compared to what life was like. Whereas if I were at, like, say, Ohio State or Michigan, I probably would be having a much more enjoyable college experience, whereas going to crew every day would have been much more of a commitment and a difference. But for me, it was like, now let's do this. Like, I'm here to work. This is not going to be a pleasant 4 years. Let me see how far I can take my body and my competitive spirit, and let's just see what we can do with this new sport. So I just, as we say in the military, embraced the suck. I just embraced it, and that's the part that's attracted to the Marine Corps and the challenging parts of life, and why, I think Eric and I do what we do. Like, you welcome that. You welcome the challenge to see how much you can overcome and to just push yourself to those limits to see what you can do.
I think that's why so many of us as civilians are so intrigued by what goes on and what you do and, how you have to push yourselves. And since you say that the rowing was a bit of a reprieve for you, because I think with youth sports, with a lot of kids and in all sports really, it is something, because kids are going through school. They are told to do X, Y, and Z things. And maybe it's chores, maybe it's this and that. But when they get to a sport and they're told to work hard, it might be kind of easy for them because they're doing something that they want to do. And that sports serves in that role for, I think a lot of us in existence. It's we look at the adults who keep going and doing it. They do it because there's some sort of other emotional side of it that's really healthy.
Plus, also being a plebe, it was, it was 1990, I was a plebe, and it was incredibly stressful. It was just awful. It was 11 full months. And so you need a good workout to release that stress. And you feel like that endorphin high and that workout high, that we all need it. And that becomes, whatever you're going through, a good workout we know does wonders for mental health, emotional regulation. It's a pick-me-up.
For sure. And for the parents that listen to this and they're going through the struggles with young athletes and this, all the things, all the stresses that come with being a parent and trying to help, provide everything for, like, making sure the parents work out and do those things. There's a lot of it. I think sometimes it gets labeled as like selfish, but it's so important to, for everyone to stay active.
And you don't even have to do like a hard workout. Like even walking, just getting out into nature. We know now what just being out in wooded areas or a park, what that does for your blood pressure. There's all this science we're learning. It doesn't have to be even as strenuous as we get older. It doesn't have to be the strenuous workouts we did when we were younger for the difference to really have a positive effect.
Yeah, that reminds me, I spent a lot of time in Scandinavia and you read all these survey results, how the Swedes and the Norwegians and the Finns are such happy people. That is very much part of their day. Mm-hmm. They walk through the woods and they say it as if you and I might say, I'm going to go grab a coffee. Right. I'm going to go on a walk in the woods. And I don't necessarily think that they have read all the studies on it, but it's such ingrained in their culture, and they spend their winters cross-country skiing, and it's, again, they're in the woods, they're doing those things. So it really is true. It doesn't have to be the go to the gym with a personal trainer type of exercise. There's a lot that so you talk about the way you were led at the Naval Academy. It sounds a little bit tough in Catholic school. I spent time in a Catholic school as well. I understand like how some of that could go. So you transitioned to leadership in the Marines. How did you approach leadership, having your background, and then when you became in a leadership role in the Marines, how did you handle that? Did you do anything differently? Could you walk us through that?
Sure. So my first platoon was a motor transport platoon, so a bunch of truck drivers, and it was all men. So I go to Japan. Now you graduate you get your college degree, which is required to be a commissioned officer, and then you go to 6 months of basic school in Quantico. We're the only service that makes every officer go through the same school, and it's basically basic infantry training. So we all do that for 6 months. And then you go to your specialty school. So I was a motor transport officer, so I went to school in North Carolina for another 6 weeks, and then I finally got my orders to Japan, Okinawa. So by the time I was 24, I'm finally in my first duty station, and I get my first platoon of Marines, which is what I wanted. And it's 55 men who are truck drivers. And a lot of them are about to get out. Morale was just okay in this platoon. It's a hot asphalt lot, a little shack with no AC. And so it's hot and humid, kind of like Florida, like hot, humid Florida latitudes, very tropical. And I realized I don't fix trucks. I don't know I'm a bit of a motorhead, but I don't need to know the mechanics of a vehicle or necessarily the preventive maintenance that they are specialized in. I'm the officer leading and making sure the platoon is working well. So you're leading the people, making sure they're getting promoted. You're doing all those advisory, managerial, leadership type tasks. But I was overwhelmed. I was uncomfortable. I was like, okay, now I get to lead all these men, these young men, and I'm only a couple years older than the corporals and the sergeants. And so I was like, wow, I'm really in charge of them, because you have these shiny gold, lieutenant bars, which let the whole world know that, yes, you're in charge, but two, that you know nothing, because it's the lowest officer rank. And so you're really out of your depth, and it's uncomfortable. Like, okay, I'm going to have to learn this, and I don't know this trade. And so that first year is just the learning curve is straight up. And so in the Marine Corps, we work out, physical training, PT we call it, and 3 days a week we would meet at 5:30 and go for a run and play some kind of recreational sports, like even ultimate frisbee or speedball with a football, where you can make it more rigorous and a really good running workout. We would do things like that just to keep our conditioning in shape. And we would do pull-ups and sit-ups and those kinds of calisthenics. And because we have a strict weight standard, grooming standards, probably the most strict of any of the services. And so I realized what would work on a team, any sports team, the leadership you exhibit on a sports team, as say a team captain, is really the same you use in a small unit leadership. And I was like, well, you know what? While I'm still learning how to be a platoon commander and learning about what a motor transport platoon does and what it's about, when we do our physical training 3 times a week, and when we play some team sports to build cohesion and morale, let's just treat it like we're or play basketball, let's just treat it like we do on any team. We've all played team sports. And so I fell back on that. Like it's not about taking your platoon and running them into the ground. It's about building cohesion as a team. So you don't necessarily have to run your fastest. You just have to run as a unit. And then we sing the cadences, we sing the military songs like you hear in the movies. That all builds unit cohesion and morale, and that's what that PT program is all about. So for me, team sports was everything I fell back on while I was learning how to be a lieutenant.
So that's cool. So you've got this group of people that you're put in this position to lead, and one of the things that helped you was playing sports with them in the mornings and just being part of that group versus being the dictator of it. That's such a value, the underlying value in team sports, because had you not spent that time playing sports, you for sure wouldn't have felt comfortable to jump in and play basketball with them, or that's something that the sports provide you, that confidence of being able to be part of something. That's really cool.
Plus, we're competitive, so when you split up into teams, anything you do, we're going to make this a competition. We're going to declare a winner here for whatever you want to do. We have some silly games we play when we have our field days. And it can be like you get one of the big tires and do a strongman type competition. You can bob for apples. We have this thing called Dizzy Izzy where you put your head on a baseball bat and spin 10 times around and run back and you're super dizzy. And it's just funny. It's all heck. And you do those things on either a Friday or at the end of a deployment. And it's like, we're going to declare a winner. You don't have to give a prize, but it's like, okay, we got to win because like we're just competitive, which is what you want in the military. And so that making it competitive makes it everyone give their all and makes it really, really fun. And so that's what team sports is all about. So we want that ethos in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, that's good to know. Again, that's how the service, the people who serve are super competitive. That's excellent to know on a lot of levels. So you're obviously competitive. You decided you're in the Marine Corps, you have a career, and like there's a clear path for you at that point. What made you go back and get your master's and your PhD and continue to be in education? What was that driving force on that?
Well, the military has paid for all my degrees. So, I grew up in Cleveland. There wasn't money for college, so the military was a way to see the world and a way to get out of Ohio, at least to go have some adventures and maybe escape the really brutal winters of the Midwest and pay for college. And so that was my ticket to the next step. And then, I didn't realize how much I love it. And I tell the midshipmen now, like, you don't have to have your whole life planned out. I didn't know I wanted to be a Marine until I was halfway through the Naval Academy. Because it's so physical and it's still only 8% women. So it's very intimidating. Like, okay, I'm a woman. Like, do I have what it takes? It's very physically, you have to be in very, very good physical shape, especially as a woman, to keep up, with all the men and lead men. And so, it took me a couple years to figure that out. Crew, certainly rowing helped me get into the best shape of my life so that I could be a Marine. So that certainly benefited, gave me the grit and resilience. Team sports gives you the grit and resilience to lose and win with grace and dignity and class, and to strive deeper when you think you might lose, but you pull that extra energy out. That's certainly the same kind of attitude we want, in any kind of fight and in the military. But the master's degree happened because I got orders to California after Japan, and I had a lot of free time because I wasn't deploying. I was like, well, what am I going to do with all this time? I'm not from California. I don't really know people out here. Okay, there's this program where you can work on your master's degree at night, and the Marine Corps will pay for it, or most of it. And so I started going to school at night, and I realized that my first love was still history and English literature, so I pursued English literature and writing, and I did that just for my own pure enjoyment. Did that over a couple of years, and then a teaching job opened back up at the Naval Academy in the English department. So as a young captain, I came back to the Naval Academy and taught. Eric Kapitulik was back there, so he and I, we served together in Annapolis a little over 20 years ago, reconnected there, and then 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened during that tour, and then, of course, we all wanted to stay in. We all wanted payback, so there was no way I was getting out then. So I did my Iraq tours, and then by then I'm in for 10 years. I'm like, well, I might as well stay in. I'm really loving this. But I also fell in love with teaching. I fell in love with education because of that tour in Annapolis. And so I just figured out a way with the GI Bill. If I became a reserve and I went to school with the GI Bill, I could do both. And so by then I'm specializing in logistics, so basically getting stuff where it needs to go in the Marine Corps, which I really enjoy. I did that in reserves. You could do some active duty time while you're in reserve. It allowed me to go to George Mason and work on my PhD. And during that time, I lived in Virginia. I was working at the Pentagon as a logistics contractor, so I was still doing Marine Corps type work just as a civilian, working on my PhD, serving as a reserve Marine, just kind of doing a little bit of everything until it finally all came together and a job opened up at the Naval Academy. I finished up the PhD, and now I'm living the dream. It's wonderful.
That's awesome. I think for those of us who live in Michigan, we understand you wanting to escape Ohio. Mm-hmm. So we get that part.
Well, I feel the same way if I lived in Michigan or Minnesota or, Wisconsin.
You bring up how the first thing you say, you talk to the young people you're around, that you don't have to have this set out plan. Right. That resonates with me so much. I wanted to work in sports. I wanted to coach, and I've basically done almost everything in sports except for coaching. That was my 12-year-old version. I was going to play till someone told me I couldn't anymore, and then coach. And I think that saying that where you're going through your path not necessarily knowing, but still pursuing your passions and still, kind of working in the areas that you wanted to work. I think there's a lot of good messages for young athletes, young people listening who want to be inspired, and also for parents who, I think oftentimes you talk to kids, like parents put a lot of pressure on them saying you should be doing X, Y, Z. My favorite is like the 5-year-old parent who's saying all the academic accolades they have, like it matters. You know what I mean?
Of a 5-year-old?
Oh yeah, it's so like that. I think that there's a lot there, that there isn't necessarily a path. It's do the right thing, work hard, and do something you're passionate about. So you talked about transitioning, like doing more of the civilian leadership. So working at the Pentagon as a contractor, to me, to the layman, doesn't sound like civilian leadership roles. But when you make that decision to go there, and you also like teaching, what's the hardest part about leaving what I would consider the structure of the Marines and going into that type of role?
Well, the biggest thing is not wearing the uniform. And I will tell you, I don't have short hair. You won't look at me and say, oh, she must be a Marine. When I wear the uniform, I get treated entirely differently, like with respect. People listen to me. And that's the thing you find when you stay in for 20, 30 years, and this is true like generals and admirals, when you stay in, you think like, oh, that's me, like I'm charismatic, I've been chosen. And then for me, I was going in and out of the uniform as a reserve and as, at the Pentagon and teaching in, not uniformed role. And people would like look straight past me. Even in my, no matter how much I tailored my clothes, put makeup on, did my hair, didn't matter, not wearing the Superman suit. And I was like, oh, it's not me, it's the uniform, it's the rank. And so that's just was a big adjustment. Just people actually seeing me and regarding me and greeting me. I'm just like largely ignored otherwise, especially in the Pentagon. People won't, they just see me as some random woman, MJ, not, Colonel Pallotta. So that was the biggest adjustment. And then, other things that I have now, Marines were people of action. We're stern. We say what we mean, and I've been rewarded for that. I've always played team sports, but now when people say, "Oh, she's aggressive," that's not a compliment. And of course, I'm aggressive. I played team sports my whole life, and I'm a Marine. But for women, there's a different expectation. So that's what I deal with now. Like, I have a furrowed brow, which we call an RBF now for PC terms. I realize, you have a nicer, more relaxed face, smile a little more. Like we all could be a little cheerier and happier more. But I realize the age I need to work a little harder on that. But I think most Marines, when you get out of the Marine Corps, you cannot just act like a Marine in the civilian world. We're pretty, we're pretty straightforward and we can be quite blunt, and we have to soften that edge.
That's interesting to think about how people address you. And I think a lot of athletes go through that when they finish a professional career, collegiate career, where they're really looked at as, a big shot or a big, big fish in a small bowl type thing. So athletes like get out into the real world and all of a sudden they're doing sales and it's hard for them, or they're doing something that their athletic expertise is no longer valued. And I think that must be really difficult to actually go and be like, wait, why am I being treated the exact same way?
Well, I think that's the importance of getting a good college degree. Like, it's not just about playing sports, Division I sports. I mean, for a few, yeah, you'll have a professional career, but for the vast majority of us, we play sports, and maybe that's a means to an end, helps you get your college degree. But having a backup plan and a civilian career, of course that's important. And then you can capitalize on that. But unless you win the lottery as a professional athlete who's going to make a fortune, you need to be able to function in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. Even some of the ones that have made a fortune
have squandered it.
And they're done at 40, and they still,
right.
Even with they have that money, they're still they still want to do something with it. So it's that education is so important. So now you're the director of the Center of Experiential Learning, Leadership and Development in the Naval Academy. Now that I had to read that one because that's very, very cool. I'm really curious about it. Like, how do you approach that type of role, and how do you address those young students and service members that are trying to become leaders? So
the Center for ELD, we call it Experiential Leadership Development. Some people say they don't know how to say it, experimental, and that's experiential. Basically, I work in the lead division, so I'm in the leadership division, the leadership ethics and law department. And the reason I'm there is so that we can build on the theory we're teaching in class, the leadership and ethics theory that the midshipmen get all 4 years. They have one semester of leadership or ethics each year. And then what we want to do is before they graduate and commission into the services, we want them to have practical experience as leaders. So they're getting that on sports teams, certainly if they're playing varsity sports. They get that in the command structure in Bancroft Hall. So if there's different companies and battalions in the military structure where they live. So there's some leadership opportunities there. And then summer training, they have three months of summer off. So 2 of those months have to be some kind of training, either on ship or doing marine training. We offer experiential learning with either, we want them to be doing leadership training in demanding outdoor austere environments, just like it's easy to lead when it's sunny and 70 degrees out. We want to put them in uncomfortable situations. So we work with Knowles, the National Outdoor Leadership School, Outward Bound. There's a camp in Western Pennsylvania called Outdoor Odyssey. We also work with camps that mentor and work with at-risk youth in New Jersey, St. Ben's Prep, Sisters Academy. So we want midshipmen out, not only making decisions in uncomfortable outdoor environments and being leaders for the day, leaders and going over altitude out in Alaska with Knowles, but also working with young people and taking them on hikes on the Appalachian Trail, which is, all the whole East Coast. So we have access to the AT, and the midshipmen get this opportunity to lead these young people who are not in the military. So they don't have to obey you. They don't have to just say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You have to let them know that you want to lead them, that you care about them, and motivate them to want to follow you, which is different than what you learn in the military. It's not compulsory. And so not only do you have the challenges of the outdoors, but you have these young people, middle school and high school, who have no hiking experience, no outdoors experience, and you have to mentor them and also teach them the grit, resilience, and traveling the 50 to 60 miles over the 5-6 days with the pack, get from point A to point B in one piece, cook food every night, and the stoves outside, get everyone bedded down, pick a good bivouac site, do all that planning, navigate everything, and then teach them how to do it. So we put them in real leadership. First, I think the Eagle Scouts teach a lot of this. Of course, the Eagle Scouts now is open to girls, but it wasn't. I was selling cookies. So I was like, no more Girl Scouts. I'm playing basketball because I don't feel like selling cookies anymore. I mean, I sold my cookies, right? And it was great. Now they just stand outside of grocery stores and
take each way out.
Why didn't we think of that? Anyway, we went house to house.
Oh, ChatGPT.
But now I look at what the Eagle Scouts do. The Eagle Scouts, some of these troops have these graduation exercises in the wilderness where they have to navigate and kind of survive on their own and get out. And it's like, wow, that's pretty hardcore. That's Marine Corps type training, experiential training, where you're combining all these different skills. So the experiential learning is part of that. Lead and mentor, apply the theory we're teaching in the classroom, but in difficult environments. And so stay cool under pressure, make decisions under pressure when you're tired, cold, hungry. And then come back to the classroom. Think about what you did well. There's a reflection piece in this experiential cycle. It's the Kolb cycle from 1984. Reflect on that. What can you do better? What went well? And then have another round of theory, education, mentoring. And the mentoring is also with veterans. We do hikes with veterans, military veterans. So we have veterans mentoring the mids on some of these hikes. We do spring break hikes on different part of the Appalachian Trail out of Harper's Ferry. So that they're going through this cycle. We want them to go through this experiential cycle several times before they graduate. So they learn about their own style. They improve it in an environment where they can fail without it affecting their graduation rank in the class, and without it being life or death scenarios out in the fleet. So that by the time they graduate and they are in charge of sailors and Marines in dangerous environments. And dangerous environments are every day. It does not have to be a war or conflict scenario. Every time you go up in a plane, every time you're in the submarine or a ship, it's dangerous. We're surrounded by dangerous large pieces of metal, high pressure steam, you name it. Accidents happen, especially with young people. And so by the time we put them out there and we're putting them in these dangerous training scenarios and environments and leading sailors and Marines, they know quite a bit about themselves, their leadership, their style, having the resilience to make good decisions even when they're very uncomfortable. So that's the goal of what our Center for ELD strives to do, give them more opportunities to do that. We're entirely donor funded as well. So it's not taxpayer money, it's all donor money that runs everything in ELD.
Describing something with much, much higher stakes than what an athlete would go through. But what you're describing is exactly what an athlete would go through? How do you make decisions? How do you perform under pressure? How do you perform when you're tired? And as the stakes rise, and then how do you train people to do that? So if you were to take all of that and put it into like what you would say to a coach, like what type of advice would you give to a coach that's trying to train the exact same age, whether it's college or middle school or high school people? Like what would your like advice be to them?
I would say, well, I like the team building. You're doing team building off-site exercises where you're doing some kind of puzzle solving, critical thinking, not on like the basketball court or the ice rink, the hockey rink. And then also, I think too, when you're having a bad season, that's where you learn about character, how to lose with grace and not give up. So let's say you're down number of goals. Does that mean you stop trying? Well, no, like that's where, like that shows your character. What's the good you can make out of that? What kind of lemonade can you make out of those lemons? And I think too, the critical piece is when you are exhausted, and this is what they do at boot camp and plebe summer, you're exhausted, you have nothing left to give, you cannot do another push-up, and you're there in the push-up position, and you can't do any more. And they say, take a deep breath and give me one more. And then you dig deep and you find you do have that extra push-up. And I think sports can give you that as well with the conditioning when you're losing. Like, can I go, basketball, can I make it sprint up the court one more time? And try to, let's do another full court press. Let's push it a little harder. I am exhausted. I got nothing left. And then you dig deep and you find out there is more in that tank. And I think all of the competitions, all the scenarios of competitions can give you that environment. And if the players aren't rising to that, to strive, it's about striving for excellence, even more than winning, about not giving up, but always striving for your own personal best and excellence. If you don't have players that are giving you that, I think that says everything about their character, and that needs to be adjusted. However, the coach wants to do that, take them off the court, or get the team. That's where a good team captain comes in. For the team sports, like in crew, where one person cannot shine. If one person's just taking it easy on the oar, you're making the whole boat, off balance, off kilter, like you're ruining it. Like there's no space at. You cannot have that attitude. So I think that's the grit and character you build in team sports, especially when you're not on a winning team.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think it's always easy to say like who's going to be the star, but you're always reliant on the entire group, and in all team sports. And it's interesting to say like in crew, because that's the ultimate one of there isn't a star. You can't take just one player and make a massive difference. Where in a lot of team sports, LeBron, Kobe make a massive difference for their teams when they, and they're at the height of their. And in our sport, Connor McDavid makes a massive difference for the Oilers on a nightly basis. But ultimately, the players who might play 7-8 minutes, they serve a very important purpose as well. So it's
and a star like Michael Jordan needed Scottie Pippen, like Shaq and Kobe. Like you can't just do it yourself. Like a star cannot be a star without a supporting cast in those certain sports. You can't do it alone. And
yeah. This is there's so much that I'd like to dive into. One of the things that we always like to try to talk to, educate, and help people think about is the athlete's relationship back to the coach. So when the athletes are looking, what do you think the people that you lead are looking for from their leaders? So having seen it from the teaching it, from being that person going through the grind of being on the crew and team and going through the initiations of being early at the academy and seeing all the leaders you've worked with and for, what do you think the people that are looking for from the coaches or the leaders?
Well, I don't know that I can speak to what Gen Z is looking for coaches, because if somebody showed up late to our boat or was chronically late and held up the boat, if it was enough, or you were not holding the standard enough, like we'd throw you in the creek, like we throw you in.
Literally.
Team, like we would throw you in the water. I mean, granted, we throw the coxswain in when we win a race. We would grab, if it's your birthday, like you're going in, you better Sometimes you race out of the locker room before they can throw you in on your birthday. But, you're going in on your birthday, the coxswain's going in when you win. That's a custom. But we also had to, if we had to tighten up a standard, we got together and checked with the coach, like, hey, she's going in. Like, this can't keep happening. And we did that. And I brought that up later this week. I'm like, yeah, you can't do that now. Like you can't do that now. That would be abuse or harassment or whatever. I was like, it's just water. It's water. We're in the military, Navy reporter. Like, come on. You just throw them off the deck. So I cannot speak to coaches and what you can and can't do. Probably better than I'm not a coach. But I will say for the Marine Corps, Marines want to be trained hard. So that's why I love the Marine Corps. There's a saying we have, bitching Marine is a happy Marine, or a complaining Marine is a happy Marine. Because if you're joining the military and you want it easy, you're not going to join the Marine Corps. I mean, the draft isn't on. No one has to join the Marine Corps. Like, if you want like college money, like you're probably going to pick a different path. If you want the hardest, longest boot camp, and you want the coolest uniforms, and you want the biggest challenge, like, I want to be a Marine. Like, there's something there. These intangibles that Marines want, and often have something to prove. A lot of them are coming from very challenging backgrounds, and they want that toughness. And so that was a big draw for me for the Marine Corps over the Navy. It's like, it's physical, it's demanding, it's hardcore, and the enlisted the Marines who enlist in the Marine Corps want it to be hard, and they know it's going to be the hardest and most demanding. And that's who I want to lead. They really want to be there, and they want it to be hard. So if they're complaining, I mean, obviously you don't want to abuse them, but you want hard training in the rain, in the discomfort, in the mud, during winter, or the hot, Mesopotamian desert in a war zone, mountains of Afghanistan, and all the other places throughout our history. We fought, and if they're complaining about it or saying it's hard, but by the end of it, at least say, like, ride them hard and put them up wet. Like that's what we want. We want hard training that maybe it's so uncomfortable in the moment that you complain, but by the end of it, you're like, yeah, we did that. But that's the mindset of the Marine Corps, and that's what I thought the mindset of crew was. Like, you just got to make it hard, because technically, when you finish a crew race, if unless you're dropping over dead, you could have gone a little harder. Like, you could have gone a little harder. Like, you have something left, and it's so painful. They say cross-country skiing and crew are the two most painful sports. I think it's the quads. You're using the quads, these major muscle groups that build up so much lactic acid that it really, really hurts. And when you watch, like, the Olympics cross-country skiing, when they're going uphill and racing uphill, you can just see the pain. They've got these thick legs. Like, yeah, that looks really painful. And I think that's what it is. You're just building up all this lactic acid over a race. But it's like, and you see the crews just fall apart. At the end, you're so spent. But, like, yeah, you could have gone a little harder. And like that's the kind of mindset. I think that's the kind of mindset that makes people drawn to that sport in the Marine Corps. And I tend to like doing intense things and pushing myself to those limits, because why not?
Yeah, so as you talk about that, I think that it's like accountability. I think everybody's looking for being accountable to your teammates. And if it's the extreme accountability, like you're describing a little bit, but even whatever it is, it's you feel good about being accountable and holding up your end of the bargain for a team. And then to push yourself to the extreme, you can't hide from yourself. When you didn't quite do it, you didn't quite do the exercise right, or you didn't push all the way, or if you take it further, if you didn't really study for the test, or you didn't, if you weren't actually prepared, and the feeling that comes with doing it versus the feeling that comes with not doing it, those are real things to build on. So that's
what we say in crew. Like, we don't, unless you're like the Olympics or the World Championships, there's no crowds in crew. It's hard to watch a race because the races are over 2,000 meters. Like, you can't watch the whole race. So it's a lonely sport, and it's, it's expensive and lonely. You're out in the river by yourself, or the lake, and then the races can be quite lonely too. But the pride is in the work itself. You don't do it for that, and you do it for the work itself and for your teammates and for the competitiveness of it, and reaching deeper, striving for excellence. And because it is the ultimate team sport, that the 8 of you have to swing perfectly in unison and make that boat just fly across the water. And it's the best feeling when it clicks. And it takes a lot of work to make it click.
What a great approach to anything you're doing. If you take all of that approach on everything, that's awesome. That's super cool.
The boys in the book, The Boys in the Boat, really describes the sport of crew really well. I am impressed with how beautifully it's written and how well it describes what the sport is all about.
All right. Well,
If somebody would want to know.
I want to put that on my reading list. So that actually leads me to the next thing. I want to ask you a handful of questions just that people might be able to take away. I hope I didn't just take the first one, but what would be your favorite leadership book or resource that you would lean on, or you would the number one thing you would share?
Well, I would say in the sports arena here, the Captain's Class. There's a book called The Captain's Class.
Okay.
Can't remember the author's name right now. That book is fantastic. And it points out, it just gives all these different examples of different team captains. And it points out in a lot of cases, the team captain is not necessarily the star. So Michael Jordan was never the team captain. Pele wasn't the team captain. But having a team captain take care of, carrying the water, as it were, for the team allows the star to be the star, because those are two big roles. Mia Hamm, her captain was Carla Overbeck, on the 99 women's soccer team. And this book just gives all these different examples of men's and women's sports about how to be a captain and a leader, and then the star. And I found it fascinating.
That sounds great. That is excellent to look at both sides of it, because you do often look at the star being the captain, which there's many examples. Yeah, awesome. What's one phrase you find yourself repeating to students, to younger people?
Fortune favors the bold. Like in the Marine Corps, we say lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Like we have a bias for action. Like do something. Like don't wait for 100% of the info. If you have 66 or 70% of the info, go take some action. You're never going to have 100% of the info. You need to make a decision. But we're like, you have to have a bias for action. You have to generate tempo. So go. You'll never have the full plan. So that we always say fortune favors the bold. Because if you take action first, okay, we're in Michigan, euchre. Like I always call Trump. Like when it comes around to you, like call Trump. Be aggressive with calling Trump.
Right.
Which I guess I'm showing my hand in a way. Like, you lead with the highest non-Trump, ace first round, but after that you're calling Trump and you're taking all the tricks. And, you tend to take more tricks, you tend to win. Fortune favors bold. And I find that's true in most everything. And also it's easier to ask for forgiveness and permission. Just do it. So many people are standing around not taking action. Marines, no, we don't have that problem. Take action. You'll win most of the time, or get what you need to get done. Just take some action, because most people just sit around and look.
That's a great thing to live by. Like fortune, follows. Be bold. Basically, be bold. And also, you can play euchre in my family, because if you ever turn down Trump, my grandma, my grandpa, you just get lit into it in our family. You gotta either play.
Not the crazy local rules that people have.
Yeah.
Ace no face, or just like screw the dealer. Like I'm sure your family has some harsh rules. Like I say, bring it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I had a friend get yelled at on Christmas Eve over suspected table talk. I'm like, settle down, Grandma. Yeah. She's unreal. She's 94. We'll still have a glass of wine and still tell you how it is. It's unreal.
So she'll never pass it. She'll never pass up calling Trump.
No.
Would you?
And if you do and you're her partner, now for sure.
Your partner's good for a trick, and if your partner better have that trick.
Right. And if you don't have it,
she's done with it.
Exactly. Yeah, she's fantastic.
She's been a Marine.
Yeah. So, MJ, I really appreciate you sharing so much. This is the amount of your experience is incredible. I think there's a ton that anyone, really not just athletes, anyone can take away from your experience. So I appreciate you serving. I appreciate you doing what you did and spend time with us today. So
thank you. All
the best, and hopefully we can stay in touch and have you back on the Athlete Lab podcast again.
Let's do it. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Bill.
Likewise.